So here in Chapter 2, we're going to look at methods for describing our sets of data. First, we're going to look at describing qualitative data here in Section 2.1. So in this first example, we're looking at different types of muscular dystrophy. There's actually many forms of muscular dystrophy. They characterize them by, the age of onset, which muscles are affected, how fast it progresses, etc. So we have here 24 patients that were diagnosed with muscular dystrophy, and they're summarized here in the table below. And so we've got patient number and then the type of muscular dystrophy, 1 through 24. So there's our data. And we want to know, how would we graphically display this data? Well, one way to do this is in what's called a frequency distribution, which is a bar graph for frequency. So we'll need classes, which are our groupings or categories, which are going to be the types of muscular dystrophy. And then we'll compute what's called the class frequency, and that's just the number of observations of each type, so the number in each group. And then we'll also compute the class relative frequency, which is the proportion or percentage of the observation. So you take your class frequency and divide it by the total. So first of all, what is our variable here that we're looking at in this? That is going to be the type of muscular dystrophy is our variable. And then the variable type, is it qualitative or quantitative? It's going to be qualitative, right? It is not numerical data. Let's go ahead and compute our class frequencies and class relative frequencies. So you can see here in the table we've got type of muscular dystrophy, frequency, relative frequency, and then we're also going to do cumulative relative. So first of all, for DMD, so the Duchenne muscular dystrophy, if you count those up here, just count the DMDs in the table, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. And then limb-girdle muscular dystrophy. So there we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. CMD. So we've got 1, 2, and 3 of those. And then BMD, there's 1, 2 left. So frequencies of 3 and 2. And these total up to 24, which was our total number of patients. For relative frequency, we're going to divide each one by 24. So 13 divided by 24. And to 2 decimal places, that is 0.54. Do the same for each of these. So you've got 0.25 is 6 divided by 24, 3 divided by 24, 0.13 to 2 decimal places, 2 divided by 24, 0.08. And those add up to 1.00, which is 100%. And then our cumulative relative frequencies. So the total in the first class is 0.54. The total for the first 2 classes is going to be 0.54 plus 0.25, which is 0.79. And then the total for the first 3 classes, well, this is the total for the first 2, 0.79. And then add on that third class, plus 0.13. So that's 0.92. And then plus another 0.08 is going to be 1.00. So those are our cumulative relative frequencies. So now to display our data here, we could look at bar graphs. And bar graph here, our categories are going to be represented by bars, and then your height of each bar is going to be the class frequency or the relative frequency. Pie charts, your categories are going to be slices. So here the categories are slices of the pie or slices of the circle, and your slice size is proportional to the relative frequency. So pie chart is going to be for relative frequencies. Now, something specific with a pie chart, they have to add up to 100%. Otherwise, you can't use a pie chart. And then there's something called a Pareto diagram, which is just a bar graph where your categories here are arranged in descending order by height. And these are actually already in descending frequency. I did it that way on purpose. For a regular bar graph, they don't have to be descending frequency. So here's a couple of different versions of a bar graph that we could use here. So notice that there is space between our bars because these are separate categories. They're not continuous numbers on the horizontal axis. So the type of muscular dystrophy, got our horizontal axis labeled. We got each bar labeled. I went ahead and put the raw numbers inside the bar. Our scale here, notice, started at 0, goes up in even increments. That's our frequency. Now, if we want to do, so for example here, the DMD, we've got a frequency of 13, so my bar height is 13. For limb girdle, we've got a bar of height 6 because our frequency is 6, and so on. And then this is actually a Pareto diagram because they're arranged in descending order. And this one is types of muscular dystrophy relative frequency here. So we've got our 54% for DMD, 25% for limb girdle, 13%, and then 8%. So notice that the same general shape in the bars here as we had before, except on our vertical, it's relative frequency, percent. And then actually our Pareto diagram here, we've got these arranged in decreasing order. And then you usually will add on, this is the cumulative relative frequency here in the red. So that's the cumulative relative frequency. And that combination makes your bar graph. So here we've got raw numbers using the scale on the left, that's your frequency. And then cumulative relative frequency is on the right, and that goes with the red. Okay, and we showed here percent versus frequency, got a key there. Now, if we decided to do a pie graph, here's our pie graph for the different types of muscular dystrophy. Because they add up to 100%, we've got our key over here by color, although in a printed copy, that color difference may not show up very much. Notice 54%, a little bit bigger than half the circle, 25%, a quarter of a circle, 13%, about half of 25, and then 8%, a little more than half of the 13. So we want the relative size of the slices to be in the correct proportion.